Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It is May 11th, Thursday, May 11th, 2017. Big day in the household/headquarters. Everybody out the door early today. We got end of the year, standardized testing. Hooray. All the educators know what I'm talking about, although you're already at work. Maybe you're listening via podcast. I got the older one in the AP exam today. So that calls to a close, I guess, 2, 3, well, like 4 or 5, I would say, weeks of intense preparation, including before school review sessions. It's been really nice, actually. It kind of gets me ready for the show earlier than usual, and I'll be sorry to see it finish, although I'll be glad for him. Other younger son in the state standards of learning exams, that's Virginia's I don't know what, annual advancement exams. I don't know exactly how they would describe them, but I always found that acronym to be a bad one because, of course, SOL, which is how they refer to it, not exactly the most encouraging of acronyms for a year-end proficiency test that you need in order to pass on to the next grade. You're SOL, kid. I don't know. Anyway, we're all SOL, of course. I find out this morning the news that has me most incensed is the claim, and I doubt it's really true, but it's even more troublesome if it's not, that Jim Acosta is reporting the White House is furious over Russian government photos of Trump meeting with Lavrov and Kislyak, the Russian foreign ministers and ambassadors. They tricked us. They tricked us, tricksy hobbits. That's according to an official, someone inside the White House. The Russians tricked us. They lie. Surprise. They do sometimes do that. And I am not certain that they really were tricked. Here's the bottom line. I tweeted it out just a minute or two ago. Aside from the fact that if he really was tricked, if the White House was tricked, he's the dumbest person on earth. Or certainly the dumbest president we've ever had. And this keeps happening to him. That's another weird thing. And I also remember when the story was, the Republicans, we didn't get hacked in the election because we're too good at electronic security. But of course, the reality is we all know now they were hacked. The Russians just chose not to release any of that information for political reasons. But still, the idea that they were actually good at security, letting photographers in. The big story of yesterday's meeting, in addition to that, first the big story was they didn't let any American press in. They only let Russian press in. Then they were surprised when photos started showing up all over the place from the Russian photographers. How they could be surprised by this, I do not know. They walked in with a stack of cameras and video recorders and electronic equipment. That prompted a second hard look at what was going on because it was outrageous. That, you're not supposed to be able to just, for anybody really, but foreign agents in particular, walking into the Oval Office with electronic equipment and surveillance equipment, essentially is what it is. They were just taking pictures there. That should be very heavily restricted. And this president tends to leave important documents out to accidentally be photographed by anyone who happens to be walking through. God only knows what they left behind, of course. Security people losing their minds about that one. But the idea that they were tricked into having this happen is so troubling. But it does merit another look. It could be that they weren't tricked. It could be that they simply let it happen, not just because they're incompetent, but because you know who would be willing to let that happen and then further be willing to take a public position that makes them look so dumb as to not be believed. No one could possibly trust this person to be president if he's this dumb. Who would say, I understand, but regardless of that problem, I need you to issue that statement anyway? A White House that's compromised would be willing to do something like that. A White House that fears the results of blackmail more than they fear the backlash domestically of putting out a statement that says, we're just that dumb. We're just that careless. We just get tricked all the time. They would prefer that people think that than find out what the Russians really know about him. Well, that's one explanation. Another, of course, the simpler explanation, the Occam's razor explanation. Trump and everyone surrounding him is a total moron, and we knew that for a long time, and I guess we're finding that out now. I don't know what was lost security-wise and all of that. I don't know why they were. I mean, I guess they were also horrified by the fact that the pictures were terrible, as Rebecca Romans points out. But I don't know. We'll see what shakes out of this. Daily Kos Radio starts off with stories like this all the time. We're live. Bill reminds us and reminds you out there in Twitter land and lets us know the Russians bugged the Oval Office, and all I got out of it was a lousy T-shirt. And it would be the lousiest if I got it from this White House. Greg Dworkin joining us this morning, ready to roll on the early side. Greg, how you doing?
A little bit early, yeah.
That's okay.
I mean, there's a lot going on, and
it turns out that that's true.
I'd point out that he is like dumb.
Yeah.
But if you were a Trump voter, you'd probably listen to your part of the radio show and say, "Hey, you don't like it? That's why I voted for him. So F you."
Yes, more than likely. But
I don't really care that he did everything wrong, and the whole place is burning down. The really important thing is you libtards don't like him.
Yes,
and the more you don't like him, the more we do. There's about a core 33% that feel that way, and that's probably his floor for the moment. Although I have to tell you, there are plenty of cracks in that particular base.
Yeah, well, the base is pretty cracked as well, and a lot of it might be on crack now.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
I'm just saying, I'm not making fun of them. I'm very concerned about the plight of the addicted.
I totally can understand why you are concerned, and I shall do my best to convey that to them.
All right.
This is the Quinnipiac poll. U.S. voters send Trump approval to near record low. Quinnipiac University National Poll finds no winner in the media war, but voters trust media more. Now, there was a slight approval bump in the Q poll after the missile strike in Syria. But today he's near record negative 36.58.
Today's the day he unbecame president.
This poll is from yesterday afternoon. And there'll be a new national issues poll, including on his health care plan, out this afternoon around noon. Today's job approval rating compares to negative 40.56 in April and a negative 35.57 on April 4th before the Syrian strike. So 36 is pretty bad. What's interesting is his negative 29.63 among independents, which is down from 38.56. Again, my mantra, pay attention to the independents. Republicans don't count. Unfortunately, Democrats can't do it by themselves. So it's all about the indies. A split among white voters with no college degree, 47 to 46. This is what I meant about cracks in the base, compared to a 57.38% April 19th. White men go from 53.41 approval to 48.46 disapproving. So that's all of interest, I think.
You white men, you're so fickle.
Let's bring in ABC senior justice correspondent.
Got to stop some auto-playing video.
Heard it.
Yeah, well, it was
me. It was not me. It was you.
Yes.
Although I did send you some audio. Maybe we'll play it. Maybe we won't.
Okay.
That's for a different story. On this one, Americans' opinions of several of Trump's personal qualities are down. 61.33 say he's not honest. 56.41 say he doesn't have good leadership skills. 59.38 doesn't care about average.
Whoops. I've lost my audio here on you. Hey, Greg, if you can hear me, maybe you want to give it another try at connecting. We're right in the middle of our poll, too. Let me see. I'm double-checking all of my own... Greg? No, still not.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, you're back. I could not tell you what it is that does that. Nothing
Neither can I, but I don't think it was me this time.
Computers. Dang you. All right.
I mean, I got a new microphone and all that, and fixed that, so I don't think it's that.
Now that you're back, you sound great.
Good. American voters disapprove 52 to 40 of the way Trump is handling the economy, which is important. 44% approve of handling U.S. policy toward North Korea. 59-36 disapprove of the way he's handling foreign policy. They didn't specifically ask about inviting Russians into the White House, but
that's a bad
not
idea.
allowing Americans there.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah. American voters disapprove 58-37% of the way the news media covers Trump. I'm part of that. I don't approve. I think they should be far more harsh on him.
That's interesting. It reminds me of all the healthcare
polls, right?
Good point. Okay.
Right. Voters disapprove 65-31 of the way Trump talks about the media. And voters trust the media more than Trump 57-31. Trump's first 100 days have been mainly a failure, 58-38.
Yes, I feel that way.
But this is the interesting part. By 54-38, American voters want the Democratic Party to win control of the U.S. House of Representatives, the widest margin ever measured for this question in a Q poll. And they ask this question differently. They ask about win control of the U.S. House of Representatives. It's not the generic who would you vote for. So it's hard to compare to other numbers. So places like Huffington Post won't include, they're now HuffPost, won't include this measure in their pollster generic ballot because the wording is different.
Okay.
But if you look within a Quinnipiac poll, if you look within a Q poll, it's kind of interesting.
Okay.
Now, other places don't have that quite wide a margin, but some of them do. And there's no question that the trend is anti-Republican right at the moment, which, and that's why I'm interested in the Q poll and the issues later. Not that issues win elections, but they're important. And we'll see where things stand there. So meanwhile, while Trump was being incredibly dumb about being tricked, they're tricksies. They tricked us. We don't know what was in their pockets, do we? Yes, my precious. We don't know. So he was talking to The Economist for some reason.
Yeah, he never talks to economists.
But this is The Economist, the magazine. They were doing an interview.
You're going to talk to an economist.
Let me read you that segment of the interview that I found most interesting. So he says, we have to prime the pump. And The Economist says, well, that's very Keynesian. And that probably confused him. And Trump says, we're the highest tax nation in the world. Have you heard that expression before for this particular type of event? And The Economist said, what, priming the pump? And Trump said, yeah. Have you heard of it? And the Economist interviewer said,
I just said
yes. And Trump says, have you heard the expression before? Because I haven't heard it. I mean, I just came up with it a couple of days ago, and I thought it was good. It's what you have to do.
Oh, my God. Did he hit him? Did he punch him?
So he just invented priming the pump. And I just thought that was awfully interesting, just awfully interesting. So what happens, Merriam-Webster, the dictionary people who are online, immediately tweet the phrase priming the pump dates back to the early 19th century. Pump priming has been used to refer to government investment expenditures since at least 1933. So they're on it, and they're just pointing out, no, Trump, you didn't invent it. And yes, you are stupid.
I know. He didn't invent it. It was actually the joint work of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass, who are being recognized more and more these days.
Right. They work on Madison Avenue, and they've both been working on the Trump campaign for a long time as unpaid advisors.
Right.
Like Roger Stone.
But it's also the same story as America First, how he thought he invented that, and the interviewer said, surely you know the history.
And he said, don't call me Shirley.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is just so stupid. But then again, our president happens to be incredibly stupid. And don't forget that, because when you get back to the Comey story, which we will, and, how this played out and what was going to happen, it's all a question of, I'm reminded of the Nixon White House. Forget about Nixon's skills. The people, his hired help in the White House, were all stupid. And John Dean, who's a veteran of those days, looks at this and says, this is the same thing. A bunch of dumb people who do things without consequence, heedless, careless.
Yes.
And don't really see what's coming. And, we all know how this story ends. So this is all part of the same thing here, but it's just it's more icing on the cake, as they say.
Man, I'm telling you. Now I'm seeing all the people tweeting about the priming the pump thing. I like
right. So that's where that came from, and I just thought I'd let you and your listeners know where it's from.
What am I going to do? I can't. How can I? I'm glad the school year is over. I am not certain I'm going to be able to get my kids to go back next year.
Right. Exactly. So I have a piece from the Weekly Standard to tell you about.
by comparison, the smartest publication in the world.
Right. Why was Comey fired, really?
Was he really fired?
You want to know why? Shall I sneak to the end and tell you why?
Did he prime the pump?
No.
Oh, all right. Yes, tell me then. He invented
The
it.
Russia investigation was getting really hot.
Hot. Like Andrea Mitchell.
But it's not simply the FBI's investigation that's heating up, says the Standard. On Wednesday, the Senate Intelligence Committee issued a subpoena to former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, ordering him to hand over documents to aid the committee's own investigation into Russian interference. Flynn was fired from his position in February for lying to Vice President Mike Pence, or so the story goes.
It keeps happening to Pence.
About the nature of Flynn's talks with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. during the transition. Meanwhile, federal prosecutors also issued subpoenas earlier this week to business associates of Flynn in relation to the Russia investigation. This movement in the investigation into Russian interference and the possibility that Trump associates were somehow involved suggests there are more questions to be answered. So the Weekly Standard is on it.
Well, good. I'm glad someone's getting on that.
Right.
I wanted to know what the real reason was.
And there it is. But,
Yeah.
in case you had any doubts, I think it's interesting
lucky
that even the Weekly Standard
Yes.
kind of gets it.
It's lucky it's publication day for them because I didn't want to wait
Yeah.
a week.
I mean, it's written, in the style of People magazine. I mean, it's no more in depth than that, but at least it gives you an idea
Yeah. Well, how
of,
can it
of
be?
what's going on.
I mean, if you wanted to write I was going to say a Russian novel about it, but that's a little bit too on the nose, I guess.
That's been done, though.
Yeah.
Russian novels.
There's nothing, I can't develop this plot for you anymore. He's just dumb. And the reason he fired him is he was worried that he was going to get in trouble.
Yeah,
Sorry.
pretty much. Now, there's this fascinating piece here. Philip Brucker, Ashley Parker, Sari Horowitz, and Robert Costa in the Washington Post. New York Times has their own version. The New York Times, I'll just mention the one thing that was interesting is associates of Comey kept saying that Comey thought that Trump was crazy. So at least Comey had slightly better judgment than we
good.
thought.
Glad to hear that was going on up in the penthouse there.
Yeah, but the better piece, I think, is inside Trump's anger and impatience and his sudden decision to fire Comey. He had already decided to fire it. Then he went and asked Sessions and Rosenstein. Mm-hmm. Rosenstein and Rosenstein kept, sorry about the pronunciation, but it's like all over cable both ways.
Is it? I don't feel so bad then.
And I specifically cite cable because if you want to hear how somebody's name is pronounced, it's better than trying to figure it out from just reading it in the paper. But in the meeting, several White House officials said Trump gave Sessions and Rosenstein a directive to explain in writing the case against Comey. In other words, Trump had already made up his mind. And it didn't take long for his initial story that it was all about how badly he handled the Clinton emails to evaporate. And by that evening, Sarah Huckabee was on TV saying, no, this was Trump's decision and Trump's decision alone. It wasn't Rosenstein that recommended it.
As he
to
did not, we
Trump.
pointed out. Yes.
Trump decided and then told Rosenstein to come up with a scenario. And in fact, Rosenstein had threatened to resign, say the stories, after the narrative emerging from the White House on Tuesday evening cast him as a prime mover of the decision to fire Comey and that the president acted only on his recommendation. Said the person close to the White House who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter. It sounds like they asked Rosenstein.
Yeah. Well,
it just reads. That's what it reads.
Yeah. I think that's probably right.
Right. The stated rationale for Comey's firing delivered Wednesday by Principal Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was he had committed atrocities in overseeing the FBI's probe into Hillary Clinton's use of the private email server. Right. So, as somebody pointed out on Twitter, it's Thursday, so perhaps today Comey had committed crimes against humanity, and we can have him in international court. We don't know.
I wouldn't be averse to that. Atrocities. That really was something. Sarah Huckabee, and they spent some subsection, I guess, of the press did spend yesterday afternoon saying, well, that Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she's lying through her teeth, but she's pretty good at it. She's pretty smooth.
She's really smooth. That was Maggie Haberman. She keeps tweeting stuff like that.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
Exactly. And that stuff got tweeted right back at her and saying, listen, that she lies smoother than the other guy is not difficult because basically what you're really saying is that she sweats less than Spicer.
Yeah.
And that's
for one
basically
thing.
all you're saying,
Right.
and who cares, and why are you doing this?
Yeah, you're about,
You're not a referee.
discerning the truth from the, boy, I'll tell you one thing, Maggie, I will tell you this, you are the coolest cucumber of a dumbass I ever met in my life. That would not be considered a compliment. I would be, I'm just going to get right to it. She's doing it really well. She's not doing it really well. She's lying and you know it, and that's bad.
Right. So here's a piece from Dana Milbank. These Republicans could set the Comey disaster right. And he's talking about people like Richard Burr, McCain, Justin Amash, Jeff Flake, Marco Rubio, Corker, Lankford, those who have raised questions even though they're going along with things. I have to say that on the surface, it may appear that, everything seems to be like a solid wall of Republicans that are resisting a special prosecutor, for example, or a select committee.
Yes.
But under the surface, it's really not that solid. And there's plenty of reports of people talking to staff members saying, we're not ready now. We're not ready yet. And the fact of the matter is that if there continues to be political, pressure from constituents, and this is especially going to be seen, I think, when the House members who are now back at their home states, and we'll talk a little bit about Tom MacArthur's New Jersey town meeting that he had last night where he got slammed. I mean, the fact of the matter is there are a lot of political pressures that are moving under the surface that you may not be able to see right at the moment. And I think that they're important, and we have to keep an eye on those.
Hello? Okay.
We'll
Did I
take
answer
care of
that one?
We'll have the staff take care of that.
Okay, very good.
So here's another one from Karen Tumulty. Why Trump's efforts to shake his Russia problem only make it worse.
Why?
Because it just raises more questions about why he did this and what was he hiding.
It did raise that question. The first thing I asked you was a question.
Right. Why Trump expected only applause when he told Comey, you're fired. This one is by Mark Fisher in the Washington Post. And truly, I mean, you have to remember the guy's a 10-year-old with no sophisticated brain there.
Yeah.
I mean, every time you try to sit down and say, what's the long-term strategy behind why he did, there wasn't any. He got mad and he fired the guy. Yeah. It's that simple.
I keep thinking about that. Like, we laughed at Jeb Bush with his please clap line, but I mean, that's all Trump is about.
Yeah, he would read the stage directions just like Charles Grassley would if you just put it in front of him.
Right. Applause.
Yeah, exactly. So you have all of that going on, and I think that's, again, kind of important. Let's talk about MacArthur. I have a couple, I watched some of it because it was on Facebook. You could live stream it. And you had a number of his constituents. He set it up so that, it's one of these Republican things. You got to show your ID and show that you live here to get in.
Terrible.
But he got hammered for like 3 hours. And, let me give you one example.
Yes.
Igor Bobek tweeted this one. Apparently there were a lot of people there because they were really interested. So MacArthur was trying to make the case that, listen, you go to war with the army you have, not the army you wish you had. So he says, the members of Congress don't vote on the bill they wish was in front of them. And his constituent, a guy stands up and says, you submitted it. You were an architect. You can't hide behind that.
I didn't even see that one coming for some reason. Like, oh my God, duh. You wrote it.
And that was going on the entire time. So it starts out, Dan Diamond had like a running thing here. I sent you that at the bottom.
Wow.
Tom MacArthur is much, much better at diffusing town hall tension than some other embattled Republicans.
Really?
And then he immediately says, well, that didn't last long. MacArthur, now losing the audience as crowd chants shame and consistently interrupts him. Attendee, Donald Trump is the greatest threat in our democracy in our lifetime for attacking the press judiciary, and gets a standing ovation. MacArthur's response, I didn't come here to defend the president. A lot of the district people support Trump. MacArthur asked about pre-existing protection changes. The audience says, if you have a pre-existing condition, stand up. And the audience gets to their feet.
Yeah.
The attending is running the meeting now. The attendee shouts at MacArthur, does your pill pass the Jimmy Kimmel test?
Yeah.
And MacArthur says, I don't know where this is coming from. We're not cutting Medicaid benefits. The CBO bill cuts $880 billion. The audience knows it. They shout it right back at him.
Yeah. Although that's their line. I mean, yes, we're cutting money from the funding, but we're not cutting your benefits. Now, you can't make that work, but yeah, they are hanging their hat on a lot of technicalities, but everybody can see through them. I mean, they're as transparent as can be. You can't cut $880 billion out of something. Right.
Now, this Armando points out,
yes.
and correctly, this was a Democratic area.
Okay.
And, as to why he was there or not, I'm still a little bit unclear. He has a line that he always talks about in terms of losing his daughter and health care. And he repeats it a lot at these meetings, and the audience was totally familiar with it, totally prepared for it, and didn't buy it for a second. And they had medical assistants and other medical people in the audience who had heard it before, and they just shrugged their shoulders and said, apply it to us, and what are you talking about? So it was quite the interesting meeting. And, whether or not it was intended to be that way for his own purposes or not, what came across and what's being written up is him being hammered, and that's really the bottom line, however he thought it was going to play.
Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't do a particularly good job of it, it seems. Armando is expressing his opinion. He figures, I guess he went out there to get beat up, but why? Let's see. He says he went there to be hammered. He went to a Democratic area of the district, but was just terribly prepared, and we don't know.
He was terribly prepared. Every single one of those questions you could see coming.
Yeah, it's standard.
I love the one about, hey, it's not our fault. We got to vote for the bills we have. You wrote the damn amendment that brought it back from the dead, you moron. That's basically what his constituents said to him, and he had no answer to that.
I wrote it in my sleep. I did not know.
They also had a long-running battle throughout the 3-hour meeting about pre-existing conditions.
Now, I guess one thing I'll throw out there, just in terms of a theory and something we cover from time to time about the way things sometimes turn out to have actually worked in Congress. It may be that he didn't write the amendment that has his name on it. Very often, I don't think he qualifies for this kind of treatment, but very often when there is a embattled, endangered member that they absolutely feel like they have to do something to save that seat, they will, when they think they have a great idea,
that was their plan?
Put it down in an amendment and then hand
that was their plan, to have him be the author of the amendment and then throw him into this particular area unprepared?
No,
because that was going to help him in the election? I'm missing the train of thought.
No, the point is that, he says we vote for the bills we get, not the bills we may wish for. Well, you wrote the amendment that saved it. And at that point, it may have dawned on him, oh, yeah, now I remember, not because he remembers writing the amendment, but because he remembers that he didn't write the amendment. It was handed to him by leadership, supposedly as a gift to make him into more of a national figure. And he is so dumb that he forgot that was the play and that he's supposed to be claiming credit for it. And that's how you walk into a situation and say something as dumb as, it wasn't up to me when you were the author of the key amendment. You forget because you didn't do the actual work of writing it. You would never forget it if you wrote it, but you might forget it if it was a cheat sheet that somebody handed you.
I can see him, being smooth and calm and deciding, I'm going to go here and my plan is to be calm while everybody's yelling at me and it's going to look good and I can use this in campaign, footage later. The problem is, there really weren't too many moments where he could do that. And the other problem is that because the issue is so hot and because he's so famous for authoring the amendment that brought it back from the dead, that everybody watched it. So it doesn't do much good to do, little snippets of campaign footage when everybody remembers what they actually saw.
And especially if the whole town was there. Even using it for, I still don't really get the idea of why.
I don't either. I appreciate the fact that, he had a plan in doing it. It wasn't an accident that he was there. But at the same time, like I said, not everybody in government is really smart.
No, I guess not. Armando says that there's a part that stood out for him was there was a constituent who was there who somehow had MacArthur's tax returns. I guess he released them. It's weird for a Republican to release them, but he came with them and he was able to tell both MacArthur and the crowd how much money MacArthur would be saving with the tax cuts. in this bill, and that probably explained a lot more of his support for it than anything else. He can't explain the benefits to you, so it must be probably that he is saving X thousands of dollars on his taxes. Did everybody know that? That's good.
Yeah. So
Good
anyway,
groundwork.
I think that those themes, the healthcare and the Russia, we talked about this yesterday on the show. Those are the two big themes that continue to dominate and will dominate the rest of the week and beyond that. And there's still plenty of firestorm and blowback from the Russia thing and the Comey firing. So we're not nearly done with that. Just not a lot of, new, things that happen other than the fact that, look at, how Republicans are reacting over the next couple of days, and don't just take at face value that they're circling the wagons. There's a lot going on under the surface. I want to throw in one last thing before I go.
All right.
Which is a completely different topic, but I just think it's fascinating.
There are others.
And this is actually international with some American complications here. There was an election in the Bahamas.
Oh, I wish I had gone to cover that.
And it turned out that the ruling party, which is terribly corrupt, and associated with either being in bed with or allowing the Chinese to come in and do a lot of big projects with the corruption and money that goes with that, unexpectedly got thrown out.
Wow.
So I have this first piece here from Antillian.org. Hubert Minnis claims election victory in the Bahamas in an indictment on the politics of Progressive Liberal Party, the people that lost.
Damn.
Voters in the Bahamas have delivered a crushing blow to the PLP's political hierarchy in almost every parliamentary constituency.
Wow. And it was, are they genuine? I wonder if they have anything to do with the American identity of progressive. Maybe. Oh, well.
Hard to know. Hard to know because everything is backwards. You know, liberal doesn't always mean liberal and so on and so forth.
They drive on the wrong side of the road, I think.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe they do like Bermuda. I have no idea.
Yeah, that happens. So this one is from Business Insider.
All right. And that's in your list here. I'm looking.
I think it's on the list, but if it's not, what I will do is I will find you back again. And see, the microphone's so good, it just picks up everything now. Right?
Yeah. I can hear the phone
and my
call.
staff has left for the day, so I can't answer the phone. All right, this one is a Little Watch Caribbean election.
There we
are. It was just from before the election. A Little Watch Caribbean election presents an interesting storyline for U.S.-China relations.
Okay.
Okay, and here's where it gets interesting. On Wednesday, which was yesterday, the Bahamian people will choose between the incumbent Prime Minister, Perry Christie.
Chris Christie.
Remember, we're talking about Perry Christie, the ex-Prime Minister who just lost.
Okay.
We are not talking about Chris Christie.
He's toast.
Because there's going to be stuff about New Jersey that comes up.
Oh.
Okay, so just let me warn you in advance. When we say Christie, we're talking about Perry Christie, incumbent Prime Minister.
Okay.
The opposition is called the Free National Movement. Now, one of the reasons I'm so interested in this story is because the Free National Movement has campaign songs. I sent you one of them. They're on YouTube, and they're fantastic.
Really? That is amazing because most campaign songs are terrible.
I know, but you should play this one. This one is really short and really good.
Where is that?
Well, again, I'll put it at the bottom so you can find it easy. It's on YouTube. And there it is.
All right. YouTube.
It's called Free National Movement, and it says Hubert.
Good Lord, the country done gone. All we hear is moan and groan. And all they do is shuffle around and dance.
Being calypso.
We need a solution. We need a new government. Cause this PLP, they bringing us shame.
Okay.
Out the door back in
It's
the yard.
catchier than Hillary in the House.
But you get the idea.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, they just have all the good songs. And
Hillary
naturally they
for
won.
You and Me. That was a good one.
Yeah, and it goes on. But, you know, they have others. It's just one of them.
Yeah, but it's
it's
a great
Modem,
base
out, you know.
Yeah, that's a much
catchy.
catchier tune than any of the other, I don't know what you would call, how you describe the music.
Yeah, see, the reason Hillary lost is she didn't have that song.
Yes, right, and she didn't play it in Wisconsin.
Exactly. And I think, you know, now that we know the problem, we can go ahead and fix it for the next time.
Right.
So Hubert Minnis is the newly elected Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And here's the story. On Wednesday, they had this election.
Yes.
Now, a PLP win, the people who thought they were going to win, the incumbents, was viewed as a positive sign for Chinese investors while an opposition victory, and the opposition actually won, was viewed as a positive step for U.S. involvement in the region.
Oh.
One of the biggest political flashpoints on the island centers around an unfinished $4.2 billion resort, the Baha Mar. It's been in the works for nearly a decade, is under the control of Chinese conglomerate Chow Tai Fook.
I'm already confused. Yes.
Which gained control of the project in 2016 after the original developer attempted to place it in Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the U.S. The Chinese conglomerate that's funding this thing is based in Jersey City. And so that's Jersey City, New Jersey.
Right.
And those who are aware of the region, if the first thing that comes to your mind is possible corruption, don't yell at us because,
That's just the Jersey City.
It's just Jersey City.
Okay. Were
Right?
they in a Kushner building?
So what happened is Chinese investment in the Bahamas skyrocketed after the Great Recession, and the China Construction America, subsidiary of the China State Construction and Engineering Corporation, based in Jersey City, New Jersey, invested heavily in this project. They missed opening dates, they had problems, and there was a problem. In emails uncovered by the Bahamian press last month, the Bahamian Minister of Education, Jerome Fitzgerald, admitted to receiving contracts from China Construction America through the Senior Vice President Daniel Liu. And the emails came after a number of denials from Fitzgerald that he had any involvement with the project. The Nassau Guardian reported that the email showed Fitzgerald solicited contracts on behalf of his own family's business.
Okay.
The Guardian reported it is not known how many contracts are held by members of Christie's administration. So the implication is the Chinese came in and invested and gave this project that isn't going anywhere and seems to be a boondoggle and awarded contracts to family members of the ruling party.
All right.
Now, if the people who were paying for these contracts happen to be based in the United States, that might be a violation of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Rats.
So Business Insider reached out to the Department of Justice, Securities and Exchange Commission, and Treasury Department to see if any entity was investigating a scandal. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act bars U.S. businesses from influencing foreign officials with cash or other rewards.
Well.
Now, this is a China company.
Yes.
So the question then becomes, well, the other party won, the people who were accused of being corrupted lost, and is there going to be any follow-up in the U.S. from the Trump administration, which, by the way, would really annoy the Chinese?
Yes. Okay.
And so that's why it's interesting. There was this election.
We don't have an
it
answer.
happened. Probably you never heard it.
No.
The other party won. The expected to win party lost. It was over a corruption issue. It involves the Chinese, but it also involves an American branch of the Chinese, and therefore that involves both potentially the Justice Department, but also the State Department, because it has to do with how supportive of the Chinese are you going to be.
Right.
Are you going to investigate this stuff, or are you going to just let it slide?
That's
With the Trump administration, you can guess they're just going to let it slide.
Yeah,
but I
I
just
would
thought it
guess
was an
so.
interesting story to bring up and bring to your attention.
now. There's still time
Because
for them
otherwise
to
you wouldn't know
miscalculate.
about
I definitely would not know about this,
And you wouldn't know the song.
That's true too. And I should, you know what? For the rest of the day, I should just be playing it in the background.
It's great, it's calypso, it's fun, and by the way, reminds you that there's this problem.
Yes, so the crowds in the photos are all wearing red T-shirts and red hats too. I wonder if they got the
Yeah,
hats.
but they don't say Make America Great.
No. Here's
Vote
a
'em out.
picture.
Vote.
Yeah.
Kind of catchy, right? I mean, it's going to be in your head all day.
Right. I'm going to just play it on a loop, I guess. Yeah, he's got a hat and everything.
Yeah, there's other stuff. You don't have to play that.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I just wanted
not as exciting.
the beginning stuff.
Well, that music was pretty uplifting.
It was.
we
I
should
feel
have
so
it.
much better now.
Yeah, we should have it in our own thing. I imagine that they would be fine. The United States government, this particular one that we have, would be just fine ignoring this, and I think we would all let it go too. They should be able to get away with this one. But if you can, ignore it and just let it go away. I'm just trying to think of, is there any reason, because I can't think of a reason why anybody would bring it up. I assume that at some point Trump is just going to go crazy with it and just start yelling about the Bahamian election.
Well, I have no idea. I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background just in case it does come up with the random tweet, because with him, you never know.
Yeah, I guess
like if somebody had just said something to him 5 minutes ago, it might come out in a tweet and everybody's going to look at it and say, what?
Yeah.
Well, at least you have some background in case it does come up. So at least you know what the story is.
And I mean, he could do it, I suppose, if
with fun music.
I don't know. Well, Armando has had enough of the music. I can see that. He's screaming about it. But I don't know. All right. Well, I'm going to keep an eye on it. It is just sort of something that I could see Trump screaming about for no good reason. Maybe is there at all an affinity as between the new majority government?
No idea.
Trump?
The stories have yet to be written. We really have to see what's going on here in regard to how that plays out. But, at least they're anti-Chinese at the moment because of corruption. Whether that makes them pro-American, I really have no idea. But with that, I think I'll leave you. I will remind you of the great musical genius Tom Lehrer, who was a satirist who wrote songs in the 60s. Everybody should know Tom Lehrer. He wrote all the music for That Was the Week That Was, the original Saturday Night Live. And, he one of the songs he wrote was called The Folk Song Army, and it's part of the lyrics go, remember the war against Franco, that's the kind where each of us belongs, though he may have won all the battles, we had all the good songs. So, it's important, it's important to sing and be happy and, be happy warriors like Hubert Humphrey as you, continue the resistance and watch what happens with Comey and a major obstruction of justice that the press, hopefully won't try and play down, because hopefully each one of them will want to be the new Woodward Bernstein and break the story about Trump corruption. So we'll see. And we'll see where this goes. This is Greg Workin speaking to my friend David Waldman, Kagro in the morning.
Yes.
And it's Thursday.
Yeah, we'll play you out with some music.
Oh, good. Armando, this is for you.
Yes.
And take care, and I'll talk to you on Monday.
Okay, thanks very much, Greg. Congratulations to the new ruling party of the Bahamas. And this is their official
Let's
song.
party!
So, excellent. Thanks, Greg. We'll check in with you next week. Oh, this is not it. What do you know? Where did we get this from? This is not the campaign song that they use? All right, well, okay, we'll just stop it for now then, because eventually, if we play enough of it, we won't be able to post this video on YouTube, or the podcast on YouTube, because they'll claim that this was a huge copyright infringement, which it would be if we played any more of it. But we're not going to. This is just fair use. In case any of you lawyers are listening, or in case any of you bots that scan this stuff are lawyers, you never know anymore. And, I know what, thanks, Greg. Yeah, it's, Harry Belafonte. I know. I'm trying not to acknowledge that so that we don't, lose our ability to post this thing on it. I went and looked it up just for that, and I figured that, it's all the same, right? Okay. Well, okay. So, anyway, best of luck to those of you in the Bahamas. Is that where the Fire Festival was that just went so terribly wrong? I don't remember what country that was supposed to be based in. It may have been a Bahamian thing. I wonder if government corruption led to some of the incredible problems there. I should have spent some time making fun of that story, but I think by the time we got around to it, everyone had heard it, and ultimately it doesn't really matter a great deal. So why waste any of your time with it? Okay, let's see. What other fun things have we got? Yes, okay. Is that yes, that's where the Fire Festival was, or yes, you turned the music off? Okay, yes. Okay, Fire Festival. Quite right. Thank you. All right. We really didn't get a chance to talk about that one, but I think that would be a distraction on a day like today. But and I did include a couple of days ago one of the better write-ups of that incredible story. Yes, and okay. All right. So you're telling me the background of it. Anything else we're gonna? Yeah. By the way, how did we decide? Did anybody know how to pronounce the island, the Bahamian island on which that festival was supposed to take place? I don't know whether that is where it did take place or where it was supposed to. They were supposed to have some sort of private island, and then they switched it a little bit, and they ended up basically, instead of saying we're going to be on this remote private island once owned allegedly by Pablo Escobar, as though that was a selling point. Like maybe you'll find drugs buried in the sand or something. But then they ended up moving it basically like next door to a sandals resort, which that puzzled me a little bit because everyone was trapped at this festival site with like no food and no shelter, and they were next to a sandals. And I know that they fenced the place off, but I mean, people weren't. I'm surprised people weren't throwing themselves over the fence and just checking into sandals, or at least begging them for food. Anyway, the whole thing was a little bit confusing, but then again, nobody really cared. All right. Let's see, Armando, I have turned off the music. I hope that makes you feel better. And by the way, if there's more that you need to vent about, I mean, it's still an ongoing story, of course, this White House and their incredible idiocy. So you're certainly welcome to refine any of your points from yesterday. See if you still stand by them. Let's round up the rest of the news, though, and see what I've left for us in pocket besides the scene from Beetlejuice. Please, I'm not infringing on anybody's copyrights. It's used by permission, by which I mean I'm sure I could get permission if I could just get through to the people, and they would definitely say yes. And I would probably have to give them some money, but then they would give me their permission. You see what I'm saying? All right. So let's see. Lots of reporting trying to piece together the timeline of just when, where, and how Donald Trump went bonkers on the Comey issue. Very likely you have all read some of it, if not all of it. Let me see if there are bits and pieces that I think perhaps we ought to bring up and maybe add some things to it. At Lawfare blog, always a good bet in terms of looking for some perspective on some piece of the puzzle that the rest of us might have ignored. Not always told from the perspective we might agree with ideologically. And I would say that's good. We're challenging ourselves and broadening our horizons. That's not really my intent. It's just that's one of the places I know that they will bring up some of the more interesting discussion points. Some of them will have to be rebutted or refined, but there's not really much in the way. I don't know. For some reason, the liberal constitutional law / SCOTUS blog coverage doesn't measure up. Although, I mean, it's a little bit of a self-selecting group too. There doesn't tend to be a whole lot of super liberal firebrands rising to that level of that middling bureaucracy that day in and day out deals with complex issues of constitutional law from inside the Justice Department and then moves on and can blog about it from the outside later on. There's not a lot of firebrands taking those jobs. They tend to be fairly conservative people, even if they're Democrats. So maybe that's part of the problem. Anyway, let's see. This piece I have here from Bob Bauer. Bob Bauer, by way of background, served as White House counsel to President Obama and returned to private practice recently. Let's see. The president named Bob to be co-chair of the Presidential Commission on Election Administration. He's a professor of practice and distinguished scholar in residence at NYU School of Law, New York University, as well as co-director of the university's Legislative and Regulatory Process Clinic. So, Democrat, yes. Firebrand liberal? Question mark. Anyway, this is the piece I thought was interesting. How it was done, and let me give you the title. How it was done. The problem is not only that Trump fired Comey, but how he did it, which, those of us who are, I guess, a little bit closer to, if not embracing the label of liberal firebrand, perhaps a little bit closer to it, we were on this as one of the key issues yesterday anyway. So it's not new news necessarily, but I think we'll be able to refine a good point out of this piece. In the critical response to the president's firing of Jim Comey, much of the commentary has centered on the action itself, its motives, and its potential effects. Noah Feldman writes in Bloomberg that the president's termination of the FBI director was within his lawful authority. but that it breached a norm that secures the necessary measure of independence for law enforcement. We heard a lot about that yesterday. And even Comey said, well, I recognize that you're within your legal rights to do this. It's just that it violates all kinds of norms. And it does. But here's why, he gets around to making the point, but long story short on why we're reading this is, he actually ends up making an argument, if I skimmed it and caught the gist correctly, making the argument that, there really is an actual legal problem with the way this was handled. We say he was within his legal authority, and that's just a facial reading of statute that he does have the authority, or he's presumed to have that authority absent any other issues that would color the decision-making process. Like, for instance, we know that there are many things that the president has the authority to do, or someone in government has the authority to do, but those decisions can't be made in your own self-interest. It can't be made in arbitrary and capricious fashion when we're talking about administrative law, things like that. In other words, yes, you have the authority to do this thing, or yes, this is within your discretion, but if you do it in a manner calculated to, say, line your own pockets at the public expense, there are ways to get around that. Yes, you had that authority, but you abused it, and here's the proof. And that, I think, is what Bob Bauer is getting at here. So, yes, Noah Feldman writes in Bloomberg that the president's termination of the FBI director is within his lawful authority, as many other people noted, but that it breached a norm that secures the necessary measure of independence for law enforcement. He sees the crisis not so much as a constitutional crisis as one of law, and no less serious for that. Here on Lawfare, Benjamin Wittes and Susan Hennessy, we read yesterday, have similarly called attention to the threat of the integrity of the Russia inquiry. The emphasis is on what the president did and its implications for the rule of law. The question of how the White House did this, the process followed, and the explanation provided tends to be of secondary concern in the analysis so far. The how issues are seen mainly as examples of botched political judgment or public communications strategy, or as clues to the real motives behind the action. This is a mistake. How Mr. Trump went about this firing has implications as profound as the action itself for the rule of law in his administration. The termination, judged on its merits, raises important questions which the administration must answer, but this line of inquiry is complicated. After all, the president, as Feldman notes, has the authority to fire Mr. Comey, and some have argued that the director may have exhausted his controversial tenure at the Bureau. Mr. Trump was quick in a late-night tweet to remind his audience that the Democratic Senate leadership had declared that Comey no longer had their confidence. Democrats and some in the press have understandably scorned the administration's opportunistic embrace of criticisms of Mr. Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation. They note that Mr. Trump had taken and tweeted flatly contrary positions on the campaign trail, but it seems odd to demand that the administration stay close to the positions the president staked out in tweets and otherwise as a candidate. Many hope fervently for better. So a fair question is whether the issue of actual or perceived self-interest have made it impossible for Mr. Trump to have removed Mr. Comey at any time, or just until the conclusion of the Russia investigation. Assume that Mr. Trump had not fired Comey yesterday and that the Department of Justice's Inspector General, now examining the director's handling of the Clinton email matter, issued a report finding that Mr. Comey had violated department policies or norms. Could the president have dismissed him then? The reason for putting the question this way is to shift the focus of inquiry from the what Trump did to the how Trump did it of the firing. This shift does not diminish the significance of the action for the rule of law. It brings out the importance of the how questions for just this concern. Armando calling in. I don't know whether to disagree or to read along with us. Hey, Armando, how you doing?
I didn't come to disagree.
Okay, you want to just follow along on this one? and comment. Yeah, I thought this was interesting. I don't know if it's. I'm still. It's good to keep in the background for now. I say you might be able to just pummel him forever on point number 1, but this is worth noting anyway. What was missing, he continues, what was missing as a matter of process from the dismissal yesterday, and some bullet points on that one. A full explanation of why the decision was reached now with this apparent urgency when there is a pending IG investigation into Mr. Comey's handling of the email investigation. 2, the reasons for the decision not to provide Mr. Comey with advance notice of the dismissal, leaving him to learn about it from cable news, a decision made without regard for the effects of the Bureau's morale or for the questions that would be raised about the continuity of operations, including the Russia-Trump campaign investigation. And by the way, yes, I did see a lot of people commenting after the show yesterday about, by the way, who's in control of the office and the papers? So another good question, still unanswered. I think that means the answer is the Trump administration. A full explanation of why Attorney General Sessions, who had recused himself from the Russia investigation, was involved in a decision to fire the director in charge of it. Everyone's talking about that one. A full explanation of the basis for the recommendation from Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who has been on the job for all of 14 days and who produced a short, seemingly informal memorandum in support of the dismissal. And that's a lot of the tick-tock of the stuff, to use the...
Can I stop you there for 1 second?
Sure.
And I think I've heard this, and you talked about Sessions' involvement in the firing of Comey.
Yeah.
I see the point, but I think it's somewhat weak in the sense that the FBI director does obviously a lot more than the Russia investigation.
Okay.
I don't think it's fair to say the Attorney General has no say in the work of the FBI director, though, frankly, that has sort of been the tradition. I will say that the AGs haven't really been involved very much with what FBI directors do, but let's just accept for the purposes of discussion that nominally the AG is the FBI director's boss.
Okay.
Right? So it wasn't like Sessions is recused from working with the FBI director in toto. It's just the Russia part of it that he's recused from.
Yes.
So the issue I've tried to get people to refocus on this is it's not so much this works on the Russia point for Sessions so long as who handles the Russia investigation for the FBI does not involve Sessions. So if the new FBI director is going to be in charge of the Russia investigation, then Sessions can't be involved in finding the replacement, would be my argument.
Yeah.
So he has to recuse himself from the replacement part if the idea is that the new FBI director is going to be charged with overseeing that. That's why I've said all along that if this was a legitimate, and of course it is not, this has nothing to do with Comey's actions during the campaign. We all know that. But let's accept the pretense. There should have said, and we will name a special prosecutor to oversee. We will give him a battery of FBI agents that will report only to him, not to the director. They will be tasked full time to the Russia investigation. In essence, you cabin off the Russia investigation from the new FBI director. And then you say, well, I can't say that's terrible. But that's not the import, so it's not going to be done that way. First, I think it's going to be a long time before they name a new FBI director. Number one. They said they're going to name an interim in 24 or 48 hours.
Right.
And my understanding is by statute, an interim can serve for 300 days. 300 days is plenty of time to sandbag and destroy the FBI, the Russia investigation.
Okay.
And Sessions is going to name that person. He can't.
Right. Yeah, he's already interviewing them. I mean, he's already in violation of that.
And let's be clear, neither can Trump.
True.
The problem is they have to cabin off the Russia investigation. I don't know why people aren't focused more on looking forward. I know everyone's, and I understand the political value of focusing on Comey. I'm looking at the other side of the equation. And I know that's not what this article is talking about, but I just wanted to take an opportunity to make that point because I don't think I made it well enough yesterday.
Okay.
What now? It's really important. Trump has to be recused from picking who's going to be in charge of the investigation. Sessions has to be cabined from it. But of course, the FBI director does much more than a Russia investigation. The new interim, the new permanent has to, in fact, be not involved in the Russia investigation. People need to start saying that. Maybe I should be first, but other people who actually matter need to start saying it.
Well, now you have a Sunday essay. Although
that's not a bad point. Maybe I should write something.
Yeah, well, you should certainly get one ready. And if it's not a Sunday thing, then you should stake that
they'll
territory
slip me
out.
in somewhere.
Okay.
But that means I have to write.
Yes.
And I've stopped writing, except Twitter.
Yeah, right. I know. It's Twitter and the radio has killed my ability to write in the long form. It's like a real drag when somebody says, "Yeah, put it all together." It's like being asked to do a brief, really, and doing your own footnoting. Oh, what? Look, the argument is this: you get an intern to write this. What are you talking about?
Right, I know. My argument isn't complicated. I think it's actually fairly obvious.
Yes,
but I haven't heard it.
Well, not yet. Anyway, yeah. I mean, it may be out there, as is often the case. Somebody somewhere is making it, and probably quite capably, but we're not able to pick up on all of these things. We should, if you're not, then neither is anybody else likely at Daily Kos, unless they're the ones writing it. In which case, hurry up and post it so we can promote it to the front page.
Exactly. Come on, Mark Sumner, get on the job.
Somebody out there is definitely good. The thoughts are occurring, and if they're not, let's prompt them. All right. Well taken. And then certainly in the spirit in which this article is being offered today, just things that we're missing along the way. There's very obvious things. There's less obvious things. There's very fine points to things that are in fact obvious, but somehow just an inch below the surface that need to be brought out. So, all right, let's see. We'll take that contribution.
Sorry, back to the
That's
art.
okay. So we were
I just wanted to take that opportunity because
that's the way we do these
things
here. Okay, that's the way we work. Let's see. We were in the bullet points of what was missing as a matter of process from the dismissal that we learned about yesterday.
Yeah, why now, and why didn't you tell Comey and all that.
Right, and then the last one that we read, there's two more here, was also an interesting point. I just wanted to say something else about also. The full explanation we were looking for of the basis for the recommendation from Rosenstein, who had been on the job for only 14 days and who had produced this short memo. And you pointed out, and then again later in the day I saw a lot of people pointing out on Twitter, he doesn't recommend firing Comey. He never does that. And here's where the big issue, I think, comes in for Sessions, as you were saying. It's true that ordinarily you would say the Attorney General has to have some, even just giving a passing nod to, all right, we're removing and replacing an FBI director. There has to be some involvement. But the serious problem here is when you point out, hey, Rosenstein's memo doesn't recommend firing. It's Sessions' letter about the memo that converts it into a memo in support of the firing. He adds that crucial part that's missing from there, that this is what we ought to do about it. That's basically my recommendation. But he says, I'm only saying it because the deputy AG, to whom I delegated everything, has basically set the table for this. But of course, if we then find out that the only reason he set the table for this is because they had a meeting and Trump said, I want you to set the table for this, then this creates a real serious problem. And I think it's not complicated it's in the sense that it's the first thing that occurred to everybody. Everybody assumed that Trump ordered this thing to have been done. And everybody, I think, assumed that Sessions was going to add his approval to this and try to do it in a way that made it not his conclusion. But I guess he couldn't get what he wanted. He couldn't get all the way there. And this would be the important point in really nailing this down. Actually, in an impeachment proceeding, when you really wanted to hang the fault for this properly on Trump and Sessions and who knows who else, you got to point out that the deputy AG just said stuff was wrong with the way he handled a lot of things, and it merits a response. And apparently, I mean, all the reporting I've been hearing about and reading in bits and pieces about the process now seems to me to lay out the case that Rosenstein wouldn't write that he was asked to and refused essentially, and now he's even more pissed that they've spent the day spinning the whole package, and that they released all the information as a package, Trump's letter, Sessions' letter, and his memo, as though it were, when he wrote it, I'm sure he didn't envision it being used in quite this way, which maybe that's foolish for him to have done, but I think he thought that he had saved face. I think he thought that he had written a memorandum that was true and defensible and did not come to a conclusion that was not defensible, and purposefully avoided doing so, knowing what they were going to do with it. But then they spun it so hard, and as the heat turned up on them, they kept turning to his memo more and more and saying, that's the reason. That's the reason. We were forced, based on this beautifully written, beautifully reasoned memo. It wasn't even, all that good, but it wasn't wrong. They're pointing at that, and that apparently has him on the verge of resignation. Of course, a good thing to get back at everybody who's screwed you over would be to then come out and just use your authority to name a special prosecutor and get a real hard ass, and then resign, maybe. But we seem to be leaving that part out, and it's going to be absolutely necessary to illustrate for everybody that this thing was cobbled together after the fact, and we got it as a package, and that made it seem like Rosenstein was part of a scheme from the beginning that he might not have been part of, but he's going to have to do something dramatic to demonstrate that he isn't.
What's funny about that Rosenstein story that broke late last night, I guess, I didn't see it till this morning, is it's reported by one outlet only, the Washington Post.
Is that right?
It hasn't been refuted, though, officially by anyone. We'll see what happens at the press briefing today by the poor man's Ari Fleischer, Sarah Huckabee.
Yes.
And what she says about it. Now, Rosenstein thinks that's going to save his reputation if he's the leak, which I assume he is, or someone, you know how that is.
Yeah.
3 persons removed, so he can stand up there and say he didn't do it.
A good friend of his.
But that's not going to cut it because, first of all, the White House has not abandoned that line at all.
Right.
It's like, he threatened to resign if they keep saying it was his idea. Well, they kept saying it's his idea.
Yeah,
when did they stop saying it was his idea?
I don't know. I don't think they're upset at the prospect of his resignation. I don't think they see that as a loss.
Think they must be. And I think if push comes to shove, they'll admit it was. They'll say it was Sessions' idea, which, by the way, is kind of a problem in itself.
Yes.
But then again, it's probably less of a problem than if it's Trump's idea.
Yes. Well, right. And I guess I'll say this. As much as I think Trump has every motivation for it to be his idea, the stumbling block is right there in the sentence, Trump's idea. I have difficulty getting my head around the thought of his having such an idea, of any idea. But certainly the kind
I'm using the word idea loosely.
Yeah, well, okay. In that case, he could certainly have had an idea. And the idea is, I'm angry at that guy.
The pump, so he does have an idea once in a while.
Yes, and it's usually, the idea is, I don't like that person. I'm going to ruin him. I'm going to fire him. I'm going to get rid of him. I'm going to make it hard for anybody else to hire him, whatever it is. That's an idea he's capable of having. You always have to pause every time you realize you're thinking about, am I about to say that Trump had an idea? let me reevaluate here. But if the idea is simplistic enough, I love lamp, I want French fries,
golf.
yeah.
I want to grab her pussy.
Yeah, those things are ideas that I can credit him with having. To no credit for him, but I will credit him for having come up with them. Let's see. So there were two other bullet points here, by the way, that Bob Bauer had put out as problems with the process. There was also missing from this any steps to reassure the Congress and the public that steps have been taken to protect the integrity of a Russia investigation committed to a core of career professional investigators and prosecutors. And is where I would file under that umbrella what happened to the office, what happened to the files, what happened to the paperwork. Because I mean, if Trump, after sending what's his name, Keith Schiller to do the firing, then says, while you're over there, take a look through his office. Either see what you find and can pull out of there and bring back to me for burial, or if that, failing that, here is a folder about how much I love prostitutes by William, by Jim Comey, and then put that in his filing cabinet and then say, "Oops, look what I found in here." It's a whole confession about how much he loves prostitutes and how he likes to spend FBI expense money on them. That's weird. Why would he leave that here in a completely different kind of paper and a different kind of folder? He must have wanted us to find it. What? It's warm to the touch? I don't know why that is. Golly. Gulp. Anyway, someone should look into that. And then lastly, the nomination of a qualified, nonpartisan professional replacement for Mr. Comey, or the announcement of an expedited timetable for such a nomination. I think, though, by the end of the day, they had gotten to that. The expedited timetable, yes. Qualified, nonpartisan professional replacement, question mark. The administration, in short, has shown little regard for thoughtful process in law enforcement that is key to the maintenance of the integrity of the legal system, because they don't care, and of public confidence, because they think they can manufacture that. Mr. Trump and his DOJ leadership have jumped ahead of the Inspector General's inquiry, moving suddenly to put their views on record on the same issues the IG is addressing. They have failed to explain why they did so, when the alleged misconduct to which they appeal when the alleged misconduct to which they appeal, there we are, is no different from that which generated the IG inquiry and was widely known when the president took office. The AG was involved in the decision when recused from any matter involving the Russia investigation, again with no explanation. The deputy AG could not have weighed the matter carefully in 14 days, maybe, some part of which he spent writing the short memorandum, which means he reached his conclusion in less than those 2 weeks. So, with whom did he consult, and on what factual record, developed in what way and by whom, did he depend? Again, no explanation. There, a great point of administrative law. If you were actually to find your way to court in contesting this somehow and the firing, and you offered the memorandum as evidence in support of the legality of the firing, you would you'd face a rather lengthy process in trying to illustrate and how you developed the argument and with whom did you consult, and you'd have to show a pretty weighty deliberative process to get to the conclusion of firing the FBI director. And although it's not impossible to do within 2 weeks, it would really have to be pretty much the only thing you worked on from day one, which again, though that's possible, but if it really was the only thing that you worked on, that would be easily demonstrable by taking a look at the schedules of the deputy AG for all 14 days that he'd been in office. And that wouldn't even take very long. And if I find out you took a long lingering lunch somewhere, I'd question whether you were working hard enough to get to this decision of this memo. It's not stuff that just because you can concoct. This is why you and I don't write these things, not just blog posts, but, these memoranda carry weight and they aren't to be taken lightly. And the fact that you can make the argument quickly isn't the same thing when it comes to demonstrating that proper care and due process have been applied.
Yeah, I get that. Listen, I understand the care and the structure.
Yes. All right. So continuing on, and moreover, the administration took no pains to say how it would proceed to establish credible leadership for the Bureau, or to assure the Congress and the public that ongoing independent investigations would be protected. It said not a word about the Russia investigation, the existence of which was publicly confirmed by the director in recent congressional testimony. Only indirectly, in the letter to Mr. Comey, did the president advert to the questions of his own legal status. Remarkably, the letter referred to reassurances he claims to have received from Comey that he, the president, was not under investigation, and this is not a point in the president's favor, but instead a further abrogation of rigorous process. It is not distantly appropriate, not even distantly appropriate for a president to be seeking and obtaining such reassurances, much less advertising them in a subordinate clause in a letter dismissing the individual who would have been in charge of such an investigation. At worst, this could be understood to be a message to those who remain responsible for the Russia investigation. Remember, I was told I am not under investigation. On display here is a failure to appreciate the importance in this administration of process and attention to form in upholding the rule of law. It is not the only example. The president's approach to the organization of his business affairs is not dissimilar. He has locked horns with the director of the Office of Government Ethics, volunteered his own incomplete and misleading judgment of what constitutes his obligation to avoid conflicts of interest, and established a controversial trust, and here he puts it in scare quotes, managed by private lawyers and notable for its lack of transparency. That Mr. Trump confronted unusual complications in managing these conflicts might be granted. How he manages them then becomes critical, and on the how question also, that this government so often routinely founders. The problem overall may be that Mr. Trump cannot help but see the legal process as he did when he was a businessman for so many years. He was a client, a deponent, a defendant, and a plaintiff. The law and legal system were factors in the business environment. They were component parts of the machinery with which he had to be familiar in order to successfully pursue his private goals. His view of the law is, it seems, coldly practical. And that's not such a terrible thing. Only the results appear to count. Well, you're in agreement with that. As a candidate, he could denounce Comey for not bringing charges, then cheer him for reopening the inquiry only days before the election, indifferent until yesterday to the issues of process and norms. As a candidate and as president, he could assail courts in harshly personal terms for failing to deliver him the goods. Evaluation of the president as chief law enforcement officer usually rests on a judgment about whether the executive and his government followed the law. This remains, of course, a crucial test of performance and fitness, but respect for process, reflecting deep concern for the integrity of the legal system, is not less important. And failure on this score can invite, and it may portend, a more complete breakdown at the point at which disregard for the legal system finally collapses into disregard of the law. It's a little bit flowery, the conclusion here. But anyway, I thought well taken many of those bullet points about what was missing. Certainly. I don't think it's any great revelation about the situation, but I think, I like to think of our role here as bringing up the issues that you might not get off of the network news necessarily, so that you've got a little more room to be nuanced with the way you think about things, and you can find problems with excuses being offered out of the White House and out of Congress trying to cover the president's ass on this, and you'll see the holes in it if you know about all these individual smaller component problems with the way he handled this.
Yeah, I mean, all true. And again, I'm one of those, let's look forward, not backwards guys. You know, people love me, supposedly. They love my approach to not looking back.
Yes.
But speaking of, I'm going to look back at a Sunday New York Times op-ed that scolded Hillary Clinton for talking about Russian interference in the election.
Yes, I saw you tweet about this morning.
And just this morning, they demanded special prosecutors so we can.
Yes.
This is a quote from the.
She won't shut up about
how the
Russians
Russians stole the election.
Okay.
I said okay,
but she should not be concerned about this because reasons.
I don't know.
It's too
there
personal.
There was not much logic to what they were saying anyway.
She should recuse herself from discussion of the election, but maybe she'll get. I'll tell you what. I'll make that deal with you. I will recuse myself from discussion of the election results as soon as Trump actually recuses himself from manipulating the Russia investigation. And since that's not going to happen, I have a few things to say, especially if you're going to ask me some questions.
No, I mean, I just think it's funny because it's not really don't talk about the election. They want her to explain why she didn't go to Wisconsin. They just don't want her talking about Russia or Comey. And, of course, all we're talking about for the last few days is Russia and Comey.
Yes. She should say, I had plane tickets to Wisconsin and the Russians hacked them. And I ended up in Florida.
Well, you know, the funny punchline, or funny in quotes. Hey, did Putin keep her from going to Wisconsin?
Yeah.
So I guess you can answer.
I don't know.
She can answer that question as to whether Putin kept her from going to Wisconsin.
Yeah, she should say, yes, he did, and here's a certified letter that says so.
Right. I mean, look, it's funny because as my new favorite columnist, Jennifer Rubin, shoot me now, says, boy, those, this isn't a big deal. Russia isn't a big deal. Stories really look pretty stupid now. They sure do. And,
yes.
Looks pretty smart right now. And she's not my favorite. I don't like the way she does her show. But Rachel Maddow's looking pretty darn smart right now, isn't she?
I think so. I keep hearing, I never get to watch the show, but I keep hearing the clips, and that's not an everyday occurrence. It is now. And I believe the reason is because she does those in-depth looks at.
Oh my God, she does 15-minute discussion about God knows what. And, then she pulls out. But yesterday she pulled out. The guy's testifying now, so it's really topical. Fun fact that McCabe, now the acting FBI director, supposedly told Reince Priebus that there was no contact between the Trump campaign and any Russian officials, which was proven to be demonstrably untrue like 2 days later. Not that McCabe didn't tell him that. Who knows what McCabe told him. But that, in fact, there have been many contacts, starting with the Attorney General.
Boy, they're fooling everybody over there. I guess those sneaky Russians. At least he's done with the investigation quickly.
Yeah, but you remember at the time they said, what do you mean the FBI told you? The FBI's not supposed to be talking to you.
Yeah.
Right? And now McCabe is up there. I'm assuming, I'm not watching it. I think it's being televised. He's testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee, supposedly about some type of particular issue, but, it's going to end up being about Comey. Anyway. And, I hope someone asked him, back in January it was February, the chief of staff of the White House said that you, told him that there was no contact between Trump campaign officials and Russian officials. Is that true? Why did you tell him that? Wasn't it false even then? Didn't you know that wasn't true? Now,
if you didn't,
irony of all ironies, of course, is McCabe was the guy whose wife ran for office in Virginia as a Democrat, and Republicans were all up in arms that he was involved in the Clinton server investigation. The webs we weave, right?
Yeah. Well, there's no escaping from it. If you're at a certain level in the Justice Department, you'll have
I
done
agree.
some
And
of
I
that.
don't know anything about McCabe. Maybe he's an honorable man. Maybe he isn't. Maybe Priebus lied.
Maybe.
But there's a question. It's similar to in that crazy letter that Trump issued, where he insisted on saying Comey told him 3 times that he wasn't the target of the investigation, or he wasn't under investigation.
Yes.
That's improper too.
It is.
There are leaks, of course, that come out the next day, but Comey's going to have to talk to it publicly. People say that's farcical. Comey would never do anything like that. It's a total breach of protocol, because we know Comey never breaches protocol, right?
We do have that problem. Yeah, well, that would be surprising. I'm surprised that he didn't, throw in something like, and the third time he told me he was cooking meth. So, he's
spirit
totally,
cooking.
Right. I mean, he was spirit cooking meth. Right. Even worse.
What is spirit cooking?
I don't know.
I've heard it so many times. I don't even know.
Yeah.
What it means.
No, I don't know. It was the target of some, I don't know.
Well, I know it was a Pizzagate, Cernovich.
What, is that right? Even, I don't even know.
It was something like that, but I never invested. I actually don't even know what Pizzagate was.
That I know about, but the spirit cooking thing only reached me like, I don't know. It was like being, I thought was just being derided as some, loony lefty
no, I think there was a real
witchcraft thing that people were doing, and look at how dumb leftists are or whatever. But I guess it was connected to, I don't know. I should look that up.
I thought it was a thing, but you know what? I don't know. I never get too deep into the.
I'm sure it's a thing. I just thought that they that it only came up because they were saying, these San Francisco liberal witches.
Oh, okay.
Are into this thing.
I mean, I always just scratch those at the surface. I barely understood the one about the military maneuvers in Texas. I forget what that was called. I
do spirit pouring milk in my cereal. It's about the extent of my spirit. I don't know what it is. But now I'm looking it up and there's an entry on Snopes.com about it. So that leads me to believe that somebody has said something untrue about it. An email published by WikiLeaks mentioned spirit cooking, but claims that Hillary Clinton or John Podesta practice satanic rituals are grossly exaggerated. Now, I don't know what spirit cooking
grossly exaggerated. Wait, you mean
they did a little bit of witchcraft?
Part of it that's true?
Yes, they are witches. But they are nice like the witches of Eastwick. I don't know. I'm not really sure what it's supposed to mean. Now I'm curious. In November 2016, social media was abuzz with rumors connecting Hillary Clinton and her presidential campaign chair, John Podesta, to an alleged satanic ritual known as spirit cooking. Now, all right. I'll continue. The rumors started circulating.
I'm sorry I mentioned it.
It's no crazier than anything else that's happening. The rumors started circulating shortly after the Twitter account for WikiLeaks directed people to an email allegedly sent from Podesta's brother Tony, which mentioned spirit cooking and a video showing a performance by artist Marina Abramovich. I'm guessing at the pronunciation. As conspiracy theories started to swirl about Clinton's alleged connection to the satanic practice, in quotes, alt-right figure Paul Joseph Watson, alt-right has to get involved, published a video entitled Hillary Tied to Bizarre Occult Spirit Cooking Ritual. While Watson attempted to connect Clinton to this nonsense, the Democratic presidential candidate did not send or receive either of the emails published by WikiLeaks. According to the documents published, this artist sent John Podesta's brother Tony an email in June of 2015 stating that she was looking forward to the spirit cooking dinner and asked if John was going to join them. So furthermore, it goes on to say the term spirit cooking doesn't refer to a satanic ritual. It was an art project Abramovich created in 1996. Although her cookbook does reference recipes containing bodily fluids.
Wait, okay.
All right. It's, Abramovich told Art News that her home cooking events don't actually feature these items. So basically she wrote a cookbook and it's, I'm sure, like earthy spiritual stuff. And she's a famous artist person. And so she exists in a world where it makes sense to discuss the idea of, well, we're wealthy, upscale urban people. We're going to have the author of this crazy ass cookbook come to our house and cook with us. And it's an event. We're going to make
like
a dinner party of it.
Or something.
Right. And this sort of thing that doesn't occur to any of the rest of us. It's a dinner party / event. I can barely have a dinner party, but when I do, it's because we've made some dinner and we have some people over, as opposed to we're going to have a performance art installation dinner. And that I get, all right, that's San Francisco liberal witchcraft, New York, bohemian, whatever. But yeah, the fact that it was then called spirit cooking made them say, well, spirit, that's witchcraft, that's Satanism, that's terrible. Hillary Clinton did it. And therefore, I don't know what. Then they're also capturing children in a pizza place. So it's connected to Pizzagate in the sense that, once again, they are sure over at WikiLeaks that the Podesta's discussions about foodstuffs are code for sex. I don't even know how to make polenta. Polenta? That's disgusting. Why, you don't like polenta? No, that's code for some horrible sexual practice. It's not.
Well,
it's
if everything's
polenta.
code, well then,
Right.
my God.
Well, that's why the pizza thing. Pizza. Want to go get some pizza? The whole Pizzagate thing was that supposedly when one guy would ask another, "Do you want to get some pizza for lunch?" That was code for, "Do you want to molest some children today?" Sure, that's the code. That's right. And "Make America Great Again" is code for pedophilia as well. Case closed. Everyone with the hat, you're all
what's
under
the
arrest.
code for I want to get peed on in a Moscow hotel?
Pizza. I guess.
Pizza.
I don't know what the hell they're yeah, I don't know. They just make it up, so who cares? So spirit cooking, I don't know. Maybe you walk into it by calling your kind of cooking spirit cooking, but who can predict what alt-right weirdos are going to make out of these things?
You're going to love this new tweet I just saw from Washington Post, The Fix, which is still almost as bad as when what's-his-name was on it. Sarah Sanders is serene while subbing for scattered Sean Spicer.
A lot of the S thing, that's all.
See how clever they are?
Alliteration. All right, well, she's serene, and she's full of, I got another S word for you.
Yes, exactly. Actually, great retweet.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we'll keep that one in mind. So, yeah, it's still going on over there. By the way, another thing that grabbed my attention, and I don't know whether they're still persisting with this, but you must have seen it. I referenced it also in today's Morning Post. I mean, is anybody following up on how dumb this is? That Trump is offering, by way of helping close out the Russia investigation, to send a certified letter to Lindsey Graham attesting that he has no Russia connections, but that this is supposed to be it's certified. And I mean, luckily, a good 75% of the world, I think, well, the ones that we know, are smart enough to say, I don't understand. Proof of delivery of the letter doesn't tell me anything. But I wonder.
I will say this, and I don't know if the law firm is intending to do this, and I doubt it seriously, because you might as well say it.
Yeah.
Which is, there's something called a certification.
Yeah.
And a certification is you certify something under penalty of perjury. It's an affirmation.
Yes. Now that's a real thing.
It's swearing under oath. But that's not what he's doing, because then he'll have submitted something to Congress under oath, and when it turns out to be a lie, that's a felony.
I mean,
so
I
he's
assume
not
that's
doing
not what he's
that.
doing.
It's just, but I think they're trying to intimate that that's what they were doing.
I wondered whether that was. I thought it might be either something like that, or perhaps a closely related thing where maybe in the real estate world, where he was dealing with other people who, though, they were sophisticated players perhaps in real estate or construction or contracting, that they might somehow find themselves, somehow bedazzled by the formality of it, and that he would hope that they would conflate a certified letter with a notarized document or a certification, such as you mentioned there, and that the official, the pomp and circumstance, such as it is, of getting a certified letter, which is really nothing, but it's got the post office stamp on it, totally establishes that it was absolutely delivered and you got it. Somehow it seems official, but of course the contents of the letter, the certification speaks not at all to the content of the letter. It would have to be something like you were saying, where you make a statement or
when you certify something to the court, it's under penalty of perjury, and it's called a certification. It's just a different euphemism for an affirmation or a declaration.
But this was not dug up at all or discussed. I mean, they just made a quick blurb of it, and maybe it just didn't deserve the attention that we've given it even. But it's just the Washington Post ran the AP press. It's only a couple of paragraphs. But yeah, not only is he going to say, he says, the White House spokesman, and again, it's Sean Spicer says this, so it may very well be that Trump had it 100% right and Sean Spicer doesn't get it. He says, so he asked a Washington law firm, and do we know what firm it is? I have not seen them named.
No, just ubiquitous Washington law firm.
George Washington Esquire.
Evil firm.
Yes. Is going to send a certified letter to Graham stating that he has no connections to Russia. And I you know what? There's a pretty good chance that they told him it in the correct terminology, and Spicer read the briefing and walked out and said he's going to send a certified letter.
Actually,
mail.
I'm thinking about it a little bit. Even if you don't take the oath, but you say something to Congress, wouldn't that still be lying to Congress?
That may be. Yeah, if he's sending it to Graham as a senator, as a member of Congress, and particularly about an issue which he's chairing a subcommittee that's investigating this thing. You make a claim to him, and I don't know. So the whole idea, not only the certification or using certified mail, whichever one he actually means, to send this thing, but then to say, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to write a letter that says I have no business in Russia or ties to the country, which is overbroad and an insane thing to say. No business in Russia he might be able to get away with, but
it will be interesting to see that letter if it actually exists.
Yeah.
Which I'm beginning to think it's never going to happen.
Yeah, right. I mean, unless the law firm is either Bannon and Miller, or perhaps the law firm is Barron and Miller. Maybe it's John Barron is back as John Barron Esquire. To whom it may concern. I totally don't have any. You can look. I don't have anything. It's totally. And who says this? Maybe this is Spicer's words, saying that he was going to send. He has no business or ties to the country. He says, based on that, Graham's inquiry. This sounds like Trump. Should be a really easy look. So basically,
a really easy look.
Yeah, you should be done in like 20 minutes. 20 minutes tops, and that's if you eat lunch. I have no business in Russia. There's no ties. The whole idea of having an investigation is ridiculous. You should be able to wrap this up in an afternoon. I say I don't have it. I sent it to you by registered mail with a copy and email, and I faxed it to you. And as you know, faxing is pretty much the same as doing it under oath.
It very much is.
So, I don't know. I found that rather astonishing. And the fact that nobody said even so much as, but a certified letter doesn't do anything. And if what you mean is I'll send you by mail a copy of my certification that I have no business ties in Russia.
I want a certified letter that Rod Rosenstein was the reason Comey got fired.
Right. I said last night I'm preparing. And he says I am preparing right now a certified letter stating that the P-tape is real, and I am willing to send it by certified mail to anyone. And that would establish the truth of the matter. Now, I won't make any certifications as to that. I don't really know, but I am willing to level that allegation, if necessary, by FedEx.
Level that allegation.
Anyway,
let me answer a question Airless Bunny asked. If the U.S. mails are used with the announced intention to attest and there is a lie, is that mail fraud? It's not the crime of mail fraud, because the crime of mail fraud requires engaging in interstate commerce.
And he's alleging that he has.
You could argue that Trump's entire presidency is nothing but engaging in fraud and scam to advance his businesses. Hey, actually, prosecutors have tried that before, but at face value, no, it is not mail fraud. But I could construct the argument that his whole presidency is fraud, and he used the mail, ergo mail fraud.
There you go. Well, we can do that. Now, in an astonishing twofer, the president intends to send this letter by certified mail addressed to Santa Claus at the United States Senate, and thereby establish the United States government's imprimatur on the existence of the jolly elf, if you will.
It's the Futurama Santa. If you watch Futurama, you know what I mean.
No, but now I feel like I have to look that one up.
They have a bizarro Santa who basically comes once a year and kills everything.
Well, that sounds exciting. And maybe something we really ought to be looking into. It sounds very Russian.
Yes, it does.
So
indeed.
that's good. So the certified letter thing, I'm glad we cleared that up. It may be that he's trying to make, but I'd love to know what law firm would allow him to certify that he has no ties at all to Russia when we all know what those ties are because they've been in the newspaper, and both of his idiot sons they can't shut up about their ties to Russia. All our money comes from Russia.
That golf writer is part of the fake news industry.
Right. Yes. Oh, and I did see somebody made a great point the other day when they were yelling about him. Yes, it's well known that the golf media is extraordinarily liberal. Nothing you can do to stop that. They're constantly going on about communism.
There are nothing but Republicans in the golf business.
I mean, what? I don't know. So that was pretty amazing. Let's see. Other things that might be. Oh, yes. Also, big news last evening, or I guess late afternoon. Although this one doesn't strike me as nearly as meaningful as everybody else took it. But the New York Times reporting that just days before he was fired, Comey had made a direct request, of whom I'm not certain, for more resources for the Russia inquiry, more manpower, more money, and then he was fired, and everybody gasped like, "Oh, there you go. It's almost, open and shut now. It's the last nail in the coffin." He asked for more money, and then he was fired, and I just, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like the request for money didn't strike me as that was the sort of thing that was going to make Trump or anyone else say, "Oh, now I'm worried." I think the fact that it was an investigation period, and even if he came to them and asked to cut the funding somehow, they probably would have fired him. But I don't know. That just didn't seem to me like such a.
I think the idea behind it was that the investigation was expanding, and by asking for more resources, but which I'm still confused on the reporting on that, because at least as I followed Twitter, Sarah Flores Zuger, or however her last name is I love how she sticks with the Flores, though. That's
good on you.
But anyway, Sarah Flores, said 100% false that he asked for money, but then she clarified, at least as I read it on Twitter, but he did ask for more resources. But I keep seeing people reporting as if they're denying that he asked for more resources.
Right. Yeah, that was a weird twist to it also. Like, well, that's usually thought of as parcel of the resources, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, how am I going to get the resources if you're not going to pay for them?
Yeah.
So all right, don't give me money, just buy me everything, and then I'll be fine.
Right. I don't need any more money. We're collecting box tops, and eventually we'll just use them. You can trade them in for a lawyer.
Green stamps. Remember S&H green stamps?
Yes. What happened to those? I mean, I know they went away, but
they went away
somehow. I don't know.
It's like the Sears catalog.
Right. Okay. Let's see. The other. What other fun things have we got here? Let's see. There was some interesting sort of insider discussion from alumni of the Obama Justice Department, basically talking about Rosenstein and what he knew about him. I don't know if you happened to see this one. Eric Columbus.
Yeah, the guy said, well, I worked with him, and did you notice that's actually where I got that he didn't actually call for resignation in the letter. He just said, please, I admit my wrongdoing, and I'll never do it again. Seemed to be the recommendation as I read it.
Yeah, and that was the important part of the thread. But he just, I'll bring it to people's attention. I'll post it. He goes on to say that generally speaking, he seemed like most of the people working professionally in the Justice Department, pretty, properly concerned with process and ethics, and was unlikely to have been tricked or coerced into recommending the firing of
to have been tricked and coerced. I thought that was his defense. He was tricked and coerced.
I thought that he was trying to say that essentially this I read to be in support of the theory that he was. He may have been asked to write a memo in support of the firing, but that they demanded that he make his recommendation explicit and that he would not. and that and I think we agreed yesterday that the allegations as he lays them out against Comey are correct, and the correct conclusion for somebody in his position is, I will not make the recommendation that he be fired. If that's something you want to do, that's on you, but he needs to acknowledge that these things are wrong because they are, and that's as far as I'm going. And that's pretty much what you would expect from a career DOJ person.
Yeah, I mean, that's defensible. Look, the analysis of Comey's behavior during the election, I think, is, that's what it was. My analysis from the moment it happened.
Yeah, I think a lot of us agreed that that was wrong, and it was wrongly handled and poorly done, and that there ought to be some comeuppance for it. And really, the only sort of thing that makes any kind of an impact on people at that level is that they either be fired or it be made clear that they won't be reappointed, or however you want to handle it. And so it's tantamount to firing if you're going to have any impact. But, Rosenstein was just in a pinch and was asked to do this thing by the president and the attorney general, which implicates them more than him. And he said, I can give you the truth of the matter in a memorandum, and then you have to take it from there. And that's all most people do. Okay, probably some percentage of people would say no, and I'm resigning. And others would say, this is my job and I respect it. And part of the respect that I have for the job tells me that when the president and the attorney general ask me for a memo, it must be prepared. It just can't be false.
Listen, what you're saying is a good defense. I've got distracted by something I just saw on Twitter.
That is fine. In fact, I can let you go back to that because we got to wrap up the show.
All right. I'm just going to give you the one point.
Yeah, tell me what.
In his testimony just says he can't comment on any conversations Comey had, the former director may have had with the president. BS. The president put it in a letter. You absolutely can comment on it. That's not classified. That's not executive privilege. Nonsense.
Unless what he really means is, I don't know anything about it.
Oh, well, then say I don't know about that conversation. Yeah. That's the answer is I don't know anything about that conversation.
Yeah. Right. People tend to fall on,
here's the hypothetical. Is it proper for the FBI director to inform the president about whether the president is a target of an investigation?
Yeah,
well, that's not a hypothetical. What's that? Wait a second. What do you mean it's not a hypothetical? You mean he is a target of an investigation? You mean it did happen? Come on.
So those are some good questions to be asking about it. All right.
All right. Anyway, you're right. 7:48.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up. We got Friday left to us. This will go on for some time, and we'll be able to analyze the full context of his testimony tomorrow. And you're welcome to join us again and doing that.
Yeah, I probably will. You know me, I can't stay away. Yeah. I'm not doing any work, so I might as well talk to you, right?
Right. Okay. I think it makes for a good show. Thanks, Armando.
Thank you.
We'll talk again tomorrow then, most likely. And, just about ready then to wrap up. Is there anything that I have to get on the record before we close things out? Yeah, probably. I'm just not going to get to either. What have I got? Let's at least note the fact that Democrats in the Senate seem determined to make some impact here of the Comey firing, and they're manifesting their discontent here by slowing down business in the Senate, as they ought to have been doing all along anyway. But I guess sort of taking it to another level. We'll see how long it lasts. The Washington Post reported here, and Tegan Goddard's Political Wire passed it on to me, that Capitol Hill was roiled Wednesday by the aftershocks of President Trump's firing of the FBI director, James Comey, as Senate Democrats began the process of slowing committee business and renewed calls for an independent investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. And Armando mentioned it yesterday. Was it Armando or Greg that mentioned that they were invoking the 2-hour rule? A little bit of description about that here. Democrats invoked an obscure Senate rule that prevents committee hearings from lasting more than 2 hours after the Senate convenes. That is to say, you can no longer consume the entire day with committee business. The gist of which is, I guess, as a standing rule, the idea is that senators should be on the floor in session and enjoying the privilege of belonging to the world's most deliberative body, as they like to say. They should be on the floor deliberating, listening to one another instead of broken up into committees. But the real practice, the modern practice is, of course, that everything gets done in committee and that hearings are interminable. And you frequently will need to waive that rule. And usually everybody's happy to do it because nobody wants to spend time on the floor. Well, at least it's not as bad a thing to do as you're wasting your time hanging around on the floor in the House. In the Senate, with 100 members, sometimes lingering on the floor can actually get things done, and that's why you'll usually see, if you're watching on C-SPAN, more conversation going on between senators on the floor in the Senate than you ever see on the House side. It's just a much less cozy place to buttonhole people on the House side. Anyway, so Democrats were invoking this obscure rule by, how are they invoking it? By objecting to a unanimous consent request, which is fairly routine, to waive it. So, in other words, you can only have committee meetings up to 2 hours after the Senate convenes. After convening at, say, 9 a.m. or 10 a.m., as they sometimes do, then that would mean that by 11 or 12 o'clock, committee meetings have to adjourn and wrap up, and what you do with the rest of the day is up to you. It's most advisable, under the original intent of the rule, to spend that time on the floor, but instead they'll spend that time elsewhere, probably at the party headquarters dialing for contributions, so it's no real help, but it does tend to impede committee progress, and since that's where most of the work gets done, it's like hanging an anvil around the neck of the entire Senate. So there you have it. That's the explanation. The move will cause Wednesday's committee business, as they did this yesterday, including nomination hearings for 3 deputies to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, to shut down around lunchtime. So just wanted to kind of clear that up and, say kudos to the Democratic senators for picking up on some of the simpler things that they can do to make it clear that they are pissed. Yesterday we saw you remember that Mitch McConnell was insisting that we didn't need to or shouldn't bother with a special investigation either into whether or not there ought to be a special prosecutor named or a select committee or any kind of additional investigation of the Russia-Trump connection in Congress because it would impede the important work that had to be done. And we wondered, what is the important work of the day over in the Senate? And it turned out to be H.J. Res. 36, a Congressional Review Act rejection of Obama-era methane emission rules. Another of the easy rollbacks that were available to Republicans who couldn't agree on any actual legislative agenda because it was by law protected from the filibuster under the Congressional Review Act. Probably a pretty dumb idea, but basically anything that they could use to protect themselves from the filibuster so that it would look like they were doing things, the Senate was eager to do them. So, 25 Congressional Review Act bills and a reconciliation bill and a budget bill, and pretty much represents the sum total of what they've been able to do. Anyway, as it turns out, people were pissed, and that bill went down. It was the first of the Congressional Review Act proposals put forth and brought to a vote on both floors that failed, including, I saw a little video clip of John McCain coming down, having a conversation, like the aforementioned conversations just discussed on the Senate floor, with, among others, John Cornyn, and he was pretty animated. You can't tell what they're talking about, but it's a group of, say half a dozen senators, and he's gesticulating rather wildly, and he's pretty animated about what he's talking about. And though we don't know what it is, he then immediately breaks from this group of senators he's speaking to angrily, or let's say purposefully, march up to the clerk's desk and register his vote on this methane bill, and he votes no. And it ends up losing. Though it was protected from the filibuster, he lost enough Republican votes for the measure to go down. And although they can try again with it, I don't know if that's something that they're going to bother spending any time on. I did see somebody jokingly suggest that, why don't they add a tax cut to it and bring it back? And it's funny, but the technical, and I didn't bother with this because it's funny. It's just a joke. Technically, might as well point out under the Congressional Review Act, can't bring it back because the protection from the filibuster, once again, like with the budget or reconciliation, it has to meet the strictures of the Byrd Rule. There's no Byrd Rule on Congressional Review Act, but it's got its own restrictions. It's got to take the form of a resolution of disapproval of an existing regulation, and that doesn't admit of attaching a tax cut to it. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have thought of that a long time ago and tried sneaking those through under CRA, but it doesn't work that way. So once again, kudos to the Senate Democrats for handling things pretty well. When they're going to get on with the business of rejecting the written communications of the president, I don't know. They'll probably never really get to that one. That calls for extreme measures, I think. But I think they're well warranted, and it would be a fun way to waste the balance of a day since you're not going to have any committee meetings. You might have to think about that stuff. All right. Let's see. Tomorrow on the show, tomorrow being Friday, another good opportunity to wrap up the weirdest news of the week. Some esoterica, some things that are connected in various ways to the Trump investigation, some things which come from further afield. But Friday affords us that opportunity to educate you for the weekend. A rather pompous way of saying I have some really funky stories that I haven't been able to get to and would like to share them with you before things roll out or spin out of control for the weekend. Tomorrow, of course, being the Jewish Sabbath, we can expect all sorts of craziness around 5 p.m. on Friday when Jared and Ivanka take off from the White House for the weekend. And one can not even begin to guess what might be issued that way. All right, well, time now to hand the microphones over to the guys on the after show. And we'll roll some music, and it won't even be Calypso music. Can't complain about this. This is the stuff we're used to. What's up next on the after show? Justice has helpfully summarized it for me. It is, of course, Thursday, and that means I get to announce the title of the show. There's a title for each day of the week, but I love to make special time to announce it. It's the Thank God It's Joe Vidi version of the after show today. Today on tap, a federal judge rejects his appeal and orders Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach to hand over documents from his infamous meeting with Donald Trump. Yes, I meant to mention that was the meeting at Bedminster Golf Club, by the way, where he was photographed holding papers that he was going to bring in and discuss with the president, including, one, the Muslim ban, and two, a lot of voter suppression activities. That all back in the news too, because today the president actually plans on signing yet another executive order, ordering somebody to do something about something else that'll help suppress the vote further in the future. But I just want to throw that on there. Operational security. Cameras in the White House, cameras in the Oval Office, cameras in the Russian hands. Just another example. Chris Kobach himself practicing poor security on that one. All right. Oops, I've wasted time. California aims to avoid a budget deficit amid uncertain revenues caused by Trump's threats on health care and sanctuary cities. And the American Civil Liberties Union sues New Hampshire, and I'll tell you why after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Why is the ACLU suing New Hampshire? For rejecting hundreds of absentee ballots. Good on them for picking up on that one. On the last half, they report that content delivery network Cloudflare alters its complaint policies after personal information of complainants is routinely forwarded to neo-Nazi hate sites. Yow.